anxiety of that environment. I mean, a perfect example is the whole plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan and to storm their state house. So that kind of stuff is going on, and it's really permeated a lot of things that is happening out on the street. And so there is an uptick in crime, particularly violent crime associated with guns. And so throughout the United States and most, not all, but most urban centers, that phenomena is occurring. There's no immediate solution to it. I know that we have Project Legend here. They've already done some things, and they're in the process of doing some investigation now and some gathering of information to make arrest of federal indictments of different things. So we're attempting to address it as best we can. But there is a significant uptick in crime, particularly violent crimes with guns in Cleveland, as well as across the country. And we're working on it, even though there's no immediate solution to it right now. And I think that's part of the overall atmosphere of the country right now.
And then the final question is, recently there was a massive dangerous hole finally filled after more than 3 months on St. Clair and East 91st Street. Fortunately, during that time, no one was hurt or injured. Why did it take so long?
The question is, there was the terminology, a massive hole on 91st Street that was open for, the reporter is saying, for 3 months. And why did it stay open that long? And fortunately, no one was hurt. I'm pretty confident that that hole was not in the street. Since I don't know every detail about what happens on every street every day, that's why we have operations and they handle things. And I will find out more details about this, but I'm pretty sure that it wasn't in the street, or it would have been brought to my attention immediately, and it would have been taken care of, believe me, before a 3-month period. So my assumption is that what you're talking about is on a vacant lot, probably associated with demolition. And usually when something like that occurs, it is not a public demolition project, would mean it was handed by it was a private demolition. In a public demolition where we are doing that work, it would have been over with. You tear it down, you put in the clean field, it's over with, and just like that. But with a private, it usually takes a little longer. And when you have long periods of time, it's usually a dispute between the contractor doing the demolition and the property owner. And if it got filled, I would say it's probably the result of one of 3 factors. One, the contractor got paid, and so he finished the work. Secondly, we threatened to cite them, and they just went on and did the work. And thirdly, it's probably could be a factor of them reaching some agreement and with some future payment or something like that. These kind of things, when you have private demolition, it happens quite often. 3 months is a long time, because we do have the responsibility of, they have to pull a permit, and then in pulling the permit, we do go out and inspect. And if the work is not done properly, or in this case, is not proper, if it stayed open that long, then it would be our responsibility to ensure that work gets done. That's why I'm saying that if it got filled, maybe we threatened them with a citation, or did do a citation, or maybe the private contractor and the owner of the property reached some agreement, something like that. So again, I know it was not in the street. It couldn't have been in the street. That would not happen for that period of time. It's probably a private demolition, but I'll check more into it.
The next question is from Taylor Haggerty from WCPN. Is the city planning to replace swings, basketball saw nets and other equipment at playgrounds? And if so, when?
The question is the city planning to replace playground equipment at the playground? And the answer is yes. As you know, right now, we're trying to limit the activity in playgrounds. We did that all summer. All summer, we limited the activity in playgrounds, just like we modified recreation center use and how young people could use and adults could use our recreation center. All this is around the pandemic. But a quick answer is yes. Hopefully by the spring of next year, we will, the pandemic will be at a level where we can have a full activity at our playgrounds and in our rec centers and go back to some form of normal operation there. But but this summer, this past summer and now, there was an attempt to prevent the gathering of large numbers of people, and so the equipment was not necessarily put in order to keep the number of people in that park or that playground at a lower number. The same thing we did at our rec center. But hopefully next year it'll be different, and we'll go to a full normalcy in terms of recreational activity.
The next question is from Mark Namick at WKYC. Could you please ask the mayor to address the latest financial assessments? Were last month's tax receipts still trending way down? That kind of thing.
This is a question around the finances as to where we are in terms of our finance. As I mentioned in my State of the City, hospitality alone, we're down, about $24 million in hospitality alone, in anticipated revenue. And also, and when you look at our income tax receipts, we are probably about 3% down there. Don't quote me on that, but I would say 3 to 4% down there, and there's probably about anywhere from 12 to $16 million there. So together, that's what, over 40 something million dollars. And so as we project out going into the end of the year, because we're developing the mayor's estimate for the budget the next year, we will probably be more than that. So if it's 40, let's say it's 45 now, or 43 or whatever it might be, we anticipate that it could be as high as anywhere between 55 or $60 million in shortfall. So what we're doing, as you know, we're operating around 85% of our budget as we budgeted, and so that has allowed us to save money there. The monies that we budgeted for a downturn, plus the robust first quarter, and then we're anticipating being able to use some stimulus dollars to offset costs associated with COVID-19. And so when you bring all those things together, with our operating only at 85% of what we budgeted this year, and then getting the COVID-19 support, which is only one-time money, but getting that support, we believe that we can end the year in a way that will cause us to have a balanced budget that will allow us to continue the service that we have, and will help us to be able to prevent layoffs. And one of the major reasons for not having to lay off is because we're not hiring. Over 80-something% of our operating budget is tied up in personnel, their wages and benefits. So you can see by 15% reduction in the number of people that we budgeted by not hiring or not replacing when they left, it really saves us quite a bit of money. And so we're balancing this out, and we do anticipate we will have a balanced budget by the end of this year. But receipts are still down, and it doesn't appear that they'll be coming back anytime soon, because the pandemic is not over. And as I mentioned in my State of the City, the hospitality industry business here has pretty much come to a halt. And there are other people and businesses that have either downsized or going out of business. And so we're seeing a reduction in income tax receipts, those kind of things. But we'll be, with the COVID money coming in, we will be okay by the end of the year. The question will be what happens next year. And I anticipate, as I talk to my finance people, that will probably be whatever 85% that we're operating now of what we budgeted, that would probably be our general fund budget for next year. Not for certain on that, depending on how these tax receipts come in, but at minimum, I would think that we're not going to have a budget that would be any higher than what we're currently operating, because we will not have one-time COVID money to assist us in the next year. As you can see in Congress now, they're having a tremendous problem just passing another stimulus support bill that, and one of the hangups that they have with this bill is that there's one part of the Congress that wants to be supportive to local governments, and then there's another part of Congress that does not want to have that included in this latest stimulus bill that's being proposed, and that will have a significant impact on how we finish up this year and what we're able to do next year.
Okay, Mayor. We have a couple questions from Gordon Williams. The first is, how do you feel about getting rid of no-knock warrants, so things like what happened to Breonna Taylor do not take place in Cleveland?
Well, the question is, how do I feel? I try not to feel in these things, but I understand your question. Your question is about no-knock warrants, getting rid of them, and so that the incident that happened with Breonna Taylor would not happen in Cleveland. No-knock warrants are a tool, and if used appropriately, they are designed to do a couple of things, to preserve evidence that would be seized by using the warrant, and also to protect the police officer or the detectives or the narcotics people who are entering that premise from being shot. And so those are the two purposes for it. But it's a very narrow window when you do that. And if I'm understanding it correctly, that window is whenever you have a real a dangerous situation where identifying yourself as police will cause a police officer to get hurt, or it will allow for the destruction of evidence that you're there to obtain with the warrant. And so if used properly, it's a great tool for law enforcement and for them to be able to build a case and preserve evidence and have a safety of officers. If used improperly, it is a very dangerous thing, very dangerous thing. And that is why people, when judges issue warrants, judges have to be more aware of what those circumstances are, and if they fit within that very narrow box, and if not, then it should not be issued. And that when police officers or detectives are going to a judge with the facts as to why they want a particular kind of warrant, then they should be transparent and honest about that. And if they're not, and the judge makes a decision based on what they're told, then you may have a situation similar to what you had with Ms. Taylor. So it's a good tool if used properly, and is designed, again, to preserve evidence and prevent harm to police officers. If used improperly, it's a very dangerous thing. So I'm not talking about just getting rid of the tool because someone didn't use the tool properly. We are saying that people should be held accountable for not using the tool properly, and negligence in how they use that tool. They should be held accountable.
Mayor, again, Gordon Williams, he had a couple questions, and I'll try to get his in. Do you think raising the educational standards for potential law enforcement officers will help curb some of the instances of police misconduct in Cleveland? And his other question is,
Well, one at a time. The question is, do I believe that raising the educational standard of police officers will help in changing police behavior or their effectiveness? I'm paraphrasing, and my answer is that you have two things that you have to look at with a police. Of course, you want a police officer who has the basic academic requirements to be able to take a test and pass a test and be able to fill out reports and all those kind of things that you just need to be able to do. So you need someone who has that ability. The second part of this, which I believe that you're talking about, is the thinking part, the cognitive part of being able to rationalize things or analyze things. And that does not always, and that's a very good point, but that does not always come with an academic degree. What you'll find is many times, particularly with police officers, their ability to understand the culture and the behavior and understand the street activity and how it behaves is a better cognitive tool than to be academically smart, but to have no good common sense in regards to what's going on in the street, which means this person who may be of a higher education will not be able to handle a situation where someone who does not have the degrees or the level of higher education would be perfectly able to handle their situation and de-escalate it rather than escalate it. So there's a balance that you have to have. Having officers that are better educated and able to grasp some of the new technology and do the things that you have to do around reporting and the continuing in-service training and the academic side that you have to have in that is important. Having an officer who may not have as much of academic training, but who has a PhD in how to deal with people and how to deal with the street and how to deal with situations where they can go in and de-escalate and prevent things from happening is in many cases even more important. So you need a combination of both, but I would say that someone who has the understanding of what the job entails and understanding of people and being able to interact with people, whether they're criminals or the average citizen, and do it in a way that is professional, courteous, but also recognizing that we're an urban center with urban crime and the need to have urban kind of policing that is going to be aggressive. You need someone who can handle that. And that's not necessarily always someone with the best education.
This question is from Joseph Tulo. Is there any truth to Cleveland and Lakewood coming together to build a dirt bike track in downtown Lakewood?
Well, that's the first. The question is there truth that Lakewood and Cleveland are coming together to build a dirt bike track in Lakewood? That's the first I've heard about that. I know that we, a couple of years ago, maybe about 3 years ago, I was planning to build a dirt bike track in a location that fell apart because of the density of the population, even though we owned the property, and it was 15 acres or so, and it was a good location in terms of the size of the property. It was surrounded by dense housing, and the kind of noise that would occur if you have competitive dirt bike track racing or just people going there and riding their dirt bikes, the decibels would have been pretty high. So as a result of that, we scrapped that location, but we're still looking at a location in Cleveland, and we're narrowing that down. But I've never talked to Lakewood about having dirt bike track in Lakewood. We've never talked about that. To my knowledge, it's never come to my attention. And I would be pretty sure that having something like that in a downtown would not be something that I or any mayor would consider unless you build a facility like an arena where you could do it, and that would be different.
Hannah Catlett from WOIO asked, she states, homicides are up at least 30% from last year at this point. Do you attribute a cause for that? Residents don't believe your office has allocated enough resources to curb gun violence. What is your response?
Well, the question is, homicides up by a certain percentage, and it is, and that some residents believe that I don't allocate enough resources to address the fact that guns are out on the street. I'm paraphrasing. And what is my response? Well, again, homicides are up. I think I've talked about the dynamic and the atmosphere and the environment and anxiety of across the country in regards to violence, and particularly the use of guns and violence. I wish, if it were up to me, we would be back to where we were before the state legislature passed laws and the state Supreme Court supported those laws when we challenged it. That said that the local government can do nothing in regards to regulation of guns, absolutely nothing. So I wish I had that ability. I just wish I had the same laws in effect that were then, which meant that you couldn't have an assault rifle in the city of Cleveland, assault gun. You couldn't purchase a handgun in the city of Cleveland. You had to have safety devices and have demonstrated that you secured a weapon if you did have one, and that there were certain other restrictions that we could put on ownership of guns, and that, as you can fully recognize, when you take all those restrictions away, and now you can pretty much have what you want, and you can get it anywhere. And then on top of that, you have the relaxing of what it means to carry a concealed weapon. Meaning that, in Ohio, if you can be a cowboy, you can just put the gun on your hip, you can walk down the street, it's not against the law. You can have a semi-automatic AK-47 or AR-15, and you can just carry it, put it on your, put it around your shoulder like the military does, like this, and there's nothing, it's not against the law. And if you can even have a concealed carry, if you get a permit. Now, it used to be, you almost had to go through a college course, like a OPATA kind of thing, where you get state certified to carry a concealed weapon, which means you had to go through courses and go to the firing range and all these other kind of things before you could carry a concealed weapon. Now, and as many of you know who are listening to this, who got concealed carry license, now you just take a little course for one day, go to the firing range, shoot the gun, they give you a license. That's it. So everybody, not everybody, but quite a few people have handguns now. And so this is driven by the state, that there's availability of guns on the street and easy access to those guns and the type of guns that you have. So if I wish I had the authority to say, no, you cannot have assault rifles in the city of Cleveland. No, you cannot just take a one-day course and get a concealed carry and walk around. No, you cannot walk around with a AK-47 or AR-15 and not break the law. You can't walk around like a cowboy, but we don't have that authority. And then you have straw purchasers. These are people who purchase guns, who are legally able to purchase guns, but they may purchase 25 guns, 20 guns, 10 guns, and then they or since they're not licensed gun dealers, they can just go out as a private owner of a gun and just sell it to whoever they want. Well, those guns are picked up out on the street. They sell those guns out on the street to people who could not legally buy guns. So if I had my say so, that wouldn't be able to either. Now, all that being said, I actually believe in the Second Amendment. I believe that people should have the right to bear arms, but I believe that it should be responsible in who bears those arms and what it takes for you to be able to bear those arms. You just can't walk around with a gun because you want to and just and then you get in a dispute and you shoot somebody or you intimidate people. So I don't have that authority. I wish I had that authority. Maybe that would have some impact. And what you'll find that if you talk to most mayors who have to deal with the repercussion of these policies and these changes in laws, they would tell you the same thing that most mayors, I would imagine, I know I'm not opposed to gun ownership. I think people have a right to own guns, but it has to be responsible. And you cannot be in an urban environment behaving like you living in a rural area where you go hunting every day, or you can do hunting and it's no big deal. This is an urban center with urban issues, and having availability of guns and to have the ability for those guns to get in the hands of juveniles with a juvenile mentality, having guns is a very dangerous proposition.
Mayor, the next question is from Mark Nemick at WKYC. Downtown property owners, many who have come to the city for benefits before, are behind a campaign to kill the school levy. Can he talk about the very well-funded campaign against the school?
Well, the question is, the reporter's assertion is that downtown property owners are against the school levy and that and is well funded. And what is my comment? Now, I don't know if it's downtown, just downtown property owners. If you know something I don't know, I like for you to give me that information. You know, I don't unless you, I can't file for freedom of information with you. But if you have that information and you're asserting that it's downtown property owners, I like to know that. I like to see what you have in order to show, because I will talk about that. But I'm not going to talk about it and not know that. But I will talk about the fact that I know that it is well funded, this campaign against the school levy, and it is by a group outside of Cleveland. Now, how they get their money and where their money comes from, I'm not aware of, and that I believe it is probably the same type of operation that you would probably see happen with that House Bill 6 around that dark money. So I would think that there are people who would be able to contribute to things like this and not have their hands shown. So yeah, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong to recognize the fact that education is the key not only to the success of individuals, but to families and communities, and it is key to the success of the economic vitality of this city. It's key. And then to say that out one side of your mouth and then to do something else is, you know, to me, it's very hypocritical. Now, but you have asserted that it's downtown property owners. I don't know that. If you have that proof and you can show it to me, then I will talk about that in particular. I do know that it is a well-funded anti-school levy, and as far as I know, it is the whole thing is happening outside of the city of Cleveland. Now, who is putting money into that, I don't know. But you seem to have information, share with me, and then I will directly deal with that. But I'm not going to accuse downtown property owners because I don't know that for a fact. But if you know it, let me know, prove it to me, I'll deal with it.
The next question is from Connor Morris from Advance, Ohio. It says, I had a question about the City of Cleveland's Vital Statistics Office. I'm hearing from a few folks that it's taking a long time for people to get documents back from this office in recent months. Why is that?
Well, the vital statistics, the question is, why is it taking so long to get your, like birth certificate, death certificate, whatever you get from vital certificate? Why does it take, is because we're in a pandemic. And because if you ever been to City Hall and you go to the vital statistic area, it's a very small area. And it could be over 100 people in this small area. So when we were looking at social distancing and we were looking at the spread of the pandemic and not having large gatherings of people in one spot, particularly indoors, vital statistic was a prime example of how it should not work. And so as we close City Hall to the public, then people have to submit their request. And because of that, it does take longer than it should take. It takes much longer than it should take for people to get whatever documents that they need, that they're looking for from vital statistics, because City Hall is closed to the public. But right now, what we've done, we have brought in people to do those renovations or capital build out of spaces in City Hall, so that employees can come back to work and work in a safe environment. And not only will they be tested for fevers, have to wear a mask, all those things, but they'll also be working in an environment that is safe. And again, if you go down to vital statistic in that area, you just don't have vital statistic, you have license and assessment. It's a very condensed place in terms of people in a small space, not only in terms of customers, but also in terms of employees. So we're building that space out to make it safe for the employees. And then once we've completed that, then what we're doing is that we will bring people back on a 5-day week, 8 hours a day, and then we will allow for a protocol for the public to come into City Hall. Since the space is small, there will only be so many people at a time that would be able to go to that space. Just like if you go to these stores and things, and they only let so many people in when people leave and they let other people in, it'd be similar to that. But at the same time, we're looking at some technology that would have requests online, or some way in which people could request it. And understanding that if you come in person, you have to wait in line until you're able to get there. And that would be the quickest in terms of getting the document. If you mail in your request, then that would take a certain period of time, and people should know that they should get their documents in that period of time. If you do it online, then that would take some time, and people should understand the period of time it would take. So we're adjusting to this whole pandemic thing, reopening City Hall, and providing those kinds of services. But vital statistic is a perfect example of the attempting to address a high demand that customers have, but not having it safe enough for not only for employees, but for the customers to be there. And now we're building that out, creating that, and then creating expectation. If you mail in, you should get it in this period of time. You go online, you should get this period of time. If you come in person, then you'll get it that day, but you will have to wait until the appropriate number of people who can be socially distanced, that people leave, then you can go in.
This is Doris Daniels from FCB Radio Network. Can the mayor share more about the initiatives he has for small businesses?
Well, the small businesses are this impact of the virus and has really been significant on its impact on small businesses. And what we did is we put together several economic development programs to assist in utilities, lease. They help carry some carrying costs, overhead costs for small businesses. The first one we did was We give them a $10,000 that would be, they would have to begin to pay back next year. And then we went in with a round two. I think it gives them up to $25,000. And then there's some grants associated with that if they have to do a build out or purchase equipment in order to be safe in terms of the virus, if they had to build something out or create ventilation. So we've done that. But even with that, you can't carry cost, even if you reduce your cost to as low as you can, if you don't have any revenues coming in. Just look at the sports team. They don't have, if it weren't for TV, I imagine, then they would not get any revenues associated with these games that they're playing, because the Browns, I think, had 6,000 fans limit, and I think they were going up to 12,000. The governor's allowing that. The 12,000 people don't pay the bills, and the Indians had no people, and the Cavaliers had no people. So even with these businesses that make a lot of money and have a lot of money, they can only carry a cost for a period of time, even if they reduce the cost as low as they can. So imagine with a small business who is paycheck to paycheck, so to speak, or doesn't have that line of credit, or doesn't have the deep pockets, those kinds of things. It's very difficult on them. So we attempted to assist them in helping to cover their ongoing costs so that they could stay, at least have a roof over their head. They could pay the lease, they could pay their utilities, those kinds of things that would help them to at least stay there and not have that cost. So as things picked up, then they would be able to get back to normal. And because the pandemic has not come to an end, and there's an anticipation of a new spike with flu season, is going to be even worse in many cases on some small business. A lot of them went out of business. Some of them are barely holding on. And then with this, the projection is that this is not going to be over with too soon. So the same dynamic will occur for them, and it's going to be tough for small business. But we do what we can. We do what we can to assist them.
This next question is from Stacy Long from Cleveland. Good day, Mayor. How do you and your administration hold public officials who commit theft in office accountable? Do you have a hotline specifically to report this criminal activity?
Well,
specifically, she's speaking about an alleged council member who does not live in the city of Cleveland.
Well, this is a two-pronged question. The question is, how do we hold public officials who violate the law, I guess, in some corrupt way? Well, if we find out, we prosecute them, or we fire them, and we prosecute them. It's just that simple. But the second part of the reporter's question is not related to that, although they combined it. They implied that there's a councilman who is in violation of law because they do not live in Cleveland. Now that's up to Board of Election, up to City Council, that's up to the constituents out there. We're not in the business of investigating council people. We're not in that business. If there's an assertion that a councilman lives somewhere other than what they claim to live, then you need to talk to the Board of Election and find out so the Board of Election can look at that and validate whether or not that assertion is true. And if there's an election coming up and there's an opponent to that particular council person or council persons, then what they can do is they can file a claim at the Board of Election. They'll have a hearing as to whether or not this person is actually living at this address, or if they committed a fraud by saying they live there but they don't, they can be kicked off the ballot. So that's the Board of Election thing. Is we're not in the business of prosecuting council people for those kind thing. That's not what we do. We're the administrative branch. They are the legislative branch. And if they commit a crime, then they are treated like anyone else. If you rob somebody, you steal. If you're in violation of campaign laws or residency laws in regards to holding your office, then I would imagine that's more of a question to the Board of Election and to somebody who would oversee that process.
This next question is from Hannah Beth from WOIO. You spoke a lot about flaws in the justice system. Do you feel your grandson was treated fairly when he was charged/sentenced, or did you influence his case in any way?
The question is, I talked about flaws in the justice system, and do I believe my grandson was treated fairly? I'm not going to answer that question, but the facts speak for themselves.
And that was the last media question. We do have one more question from a resident, I believe. He just wants to know, would you be open to cooperating with other Ohio government entities to create a high-speed rail from Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati? I think it would be beneficial to the state. And he also asked, do we think that there will be an impact to the city if the NFL draft is canceled?
All right, one question at a time. This is a private citizen, to you reporters, asking this question about what about a high-speed rail between Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati? Would I think it would be beneficial? And the quick answer to that is yes. As you remember, we had about $400 million from federal transportation people to begin the preliminary studies and the preliminary look at that when Governor Kasich was elected, and he gave the money back. And as a result of giving the money back, we don't even have the preliminary thing. So I believe it was a mistake then for the then Governor Kasich to give that money back, and I believe, and I still believe it's a mistake. And we would have been much further down the road to at least have a basic understanding of what that total cost would be and all that. But you have to do those preliminary things, and now we don't even have the basis to make the economic argument that citizen is asking. But I do agree with him that it would have been a great asset to have high-speed rail. As a matter, it's super. I forget what they call it. It's the Hyperloop or something like that, I think they call it, where they're looking at from here to Chicago or something like that, where you go through like a tunnel, and the train goes through this tunnel at high speed. So that's the newest conversation that is being held. Is not rail. It is a hyperloop. I think that's what they call it. And it's a more advanced technology where you can get from one location to another very quickly because of the high speed of the train going through this hyper thing. It reminds me of, remember you used to go to the bank and you had this little tube, you put your, whatever it is, you put it there and it sucks it up there. Well, that's what it reminds me of. And so it would be something similar to that, which would be a much faster way of traveling. So that is being looked at, and I don't know how far that has gone, but I know that has been. But I do believe high-speed rail at that time was what we should have at least done the study. And the second part of that question.
Do you think there will be a negative impact?
Oh, do I think it'd be a negative impact to the city of Cleveland if they have to cancel the NFL draft? Of course, because my understanding that the NFL draft draws more people than any other event. There are several hundred thousands of people, and if you have several hundred thousands of people, I know when we had the Republican National Convention, we didn't have 100,000 people come in, all the hotels are full, the restaurants and all the entertainment venues. And as I mentioned to you, the hospitality in my state of city, that the hospitality industry has pretty much come to a halt because it relies on large numbers of people, mass gatherings of people. And this would be something that would be that would not only be a large gathering, it would be a massive gathering of people where we would have all of the hotels full, the restaurants are full, entertainment venues are full, everything. It would be, and people would come, you know, our football fans, our people would come not just for the draft on that particular night, a day, they would probably be here for 3 or 4 days. And so you can see the economic benefit that would be associated with that. And the whole question, as you ask around it being canceled, is really around the pandemic and whether or not we have come to a point where you could bring together several hundred thousands of people in one spot and not be afraid of having a super spreader event in the city of Cleveland. If that issue is not resolved in regards to pandemic, I'm pretty sure that you will have a draft, but it will probably be more virtual than in reality. But yes, it would have an economic impact, and as I said, hospitality industry would lose out tremendously because of the lack of revenues that because not only the lack of revenues they have now, but what they would miss out in terms of the revenues that would be produced by this event. It's a major event.
Okay, Mayor, this next question is from John. It says, watching the mayor's media briefing, would he be willing to address the plan for reopening the city, and specifically when he thinks or will base his decision on to lift the civil emergency order?
The question is, and I'm paraphrasing, basically the person's asking about when would we reopen the city and lift the civil emergency order to allow for normal activity. That is driven by the pandemic. It's driven by whether or not people can go back to normalcy without having an additional spike. We've gone from, at our top, over 100 cases, new cases a day, to down now in the teens and the 20s. That's a significant improvement. And we've been there for a while, but it's not over with. When we haven't been at zero for a for months. We haven't been at zero for a long time. So that means that even with the things that we have in place, Clevelanders are still being infected by the virus. And so understanding that, and understanding that once you open things up and people have even more contact, like we talked about the NFL draft with hundreds of thousands of people, or other kind of activities where you have sporting events, where you have stadiums and arenas full, restaurants full, all to capacity, all that kind of stuff. Right now, if we did that, we would have a spike in the virus that would go straight up, and I'm not willing to do that. Our ability to come out of this on the other side and be in the best shape, both health-wise for the individual and economically, is to get control of the virus and to get this virus in a way that we don't have these infections. Of course, having a vaccine is a critical part of that because it allows for people to develop some immunity, and then having better ways for people to interact going forward is going to be part of it. But I don't see us being able to just open things. In those states that have done that, you've seen what has happened. They have had spikes in their COVID-19 infections, and they had to re-shut down again. They had to shut back down again. And on the second time is always worse than the first time. So if you had to shut it down again, I mean, you just barely made it through the first one, right? And then here you are as a business person, particularly small business, and then they shut it down again. Well, you can't go through it again. You put all your energy and effort and resources in surviving the first time. How you gonna survive the second time? You don't have the same cushion, the same resources to go through the second time. And we don't want that to happen. So we'll lift the proclamation of a civil emergency at the proper time, and that will be dependent on how we're able to control the spread of the virus. And I think a key to that is whether or not there's a vaccine and proper protocol and going forward and how people interact going forward. But one final thing on that. I did read a little something about the pandemic of 1918. And some of the same discussions were going on about should you wear a mask, should you wear a mask, science versus business, and should you do this, should you do that. Well, my point in telling you that is that eventually we did get back to normal. It's normal in the sense that people began to mass gather again, and people began to interact again, where it was even considered back then that maybe we would never be able to have things get back to normal. Well, the same discussion and the same attitude and approaches is happening now. People are arguing about these masks. People are arguing about businesses. People are arguing about whether it's a hoax or not. There's all this stuff is going on, and then there are people saying that we'll never go back to where it used to be. Well, we've been through this before, and we did get back to where we used to be. But we had to work through this thing. And once we work through it, we have to work through it in a way that protects people in terms of their health, protects families and communities, but at the same time, do it in a way that it does not just put the death nail into businesses, especially small businesses. And that's why we provide the support that we provide for them. But having a second round, a second spike would be, you might as well just put a padlock on their door. They've used up everything they could to make it through the first one. They will not be able to survive the second.
Okay, Mayor, last question.
They tell me this is the last question. What is it?
From Danny. Mayor, can you please talk about why the school levy is important and how people can get involved?
The question is, why is the school levy important and how people get involved? You know, it's important because how we educate our children. You know, I hear this from everybody. That the children are our future. I don't care what community I go to, whether it's a Black community, a white community, a Hispanic community, I don't care what economic level they are. They could be a CEO at a corporation, or even a homeless person, or a working class person. Everybody would tell you the same thing. Education is the key to success. And I will tell you, I remember when I first ran for mayor, and one of the things that people talked about was schools. And there were people who told me that they would never vote for a school levy. And then as soon as they finished saying that, the next breath they said, and what are you going to do about these bad schools? So even people who had an adverse opinion about paying recognize the fact that you have to do something. So these people who have organized against issue 68 are people who are doing that for very selfish reasons. Very selfish reasons. One of your reporters has said that it's the downtown business people. I don't know that for sure, and I'm asking them to demonstrate that to me so I can address it. But I'm not going to say that because I don't know that for sure. But I do know that those who are financing this have a pretty deep pockets, and that they're not in the city of Cleveland, but they're in another city, in another part of the state of Ohio, with a very conservative point of view around financing and school like that. It's the same type of attitude. I got mine, you get yours, and I don't feel like paying for yours. That's what it is. Education is the key to our success. You can't on one hand say that the children are our future and that they need to have a good education. You can't say on one hand that in order for us to have a vibrant, thriving economy, we have to have young people who are educated with the kind of skills and knowledge that they need in order to fill the jobs that we have to have in order to have a workforce where business want to come to Ohio and come to Cleveland because of the knowledge of our young people. You can't say all that stuff and then say, don't pay for it. Who's going to pay for it? You need issue 68, and issue 68 is a renewal with a small increase. A renewal with a small increase. And I believe this is the third time, maybe the fourth time that we had this renewal with no increase, and this has a small increase associated with it. And it is for the benefit of educating the children of Cleveland and positioning them in a way that they can be competitive in this world and be part of the vibrancy of our society and add to the robustness of our economics. And then you have all of these people who are saying you shouldn't do it, who have money because it's well funded. Question them as to why they're doing it. And I will tell you, it's very selfish. It has nothing to do with the well-being of anybody other than themselves. Nothing. Even though they, on one hand, say it's essential for them to continue to be in the financial situation that they are in, is essential to have well-educated children, but on the other hand, they undermine it. So, education of our children, if you don't care nothing about your children, then you don't care nothing about anybody. You just run it off at the mouth, and you're just doing pretense. So I thank you for listening to me today, and I'll see you next time.